I'm Doug Boynton, and this is WHRO's Weekly Edition, where we highlight the week's news and stories happening in our area. Here's what's on tap as we enter the final week of April. Former New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu was in Newport News for a social justice conference. WHRO spoke with him about both areas' common issues. Suffolk is beginning to tighten its focus on environmental crimes, especially those like illegal dumping.
We got phone calls, we got emails, we got pictures frequently about dumping back here, and it's been ongoing for years.
And WHRO had a chat with Williamsburg's first poet laureate about the importance of growing the art of the spoken word in the city. These stories and more, but first, this news update from NPR. It's WHRO's Weekly Edition. Welcome again. I'm Doug Boynton. We start things off this week with news about a new documentary. Been Here, Stay Here highlights Tangier Island's unique culture while residents fight to save their homes from erosion. And WHRO's Catherine Hafner takes us inside their fight and the story.
Tangier is one of the last inhabited islands in the Chesapeake Bay. It's rapidly losing shoreline from rising tides. New York filmmaker David Usui says he first heard of it in the national news nearly a decade ago.
It just sort of sparked my curiosity enough to just pack a bag and travel down there just to see where this place was, who these people were.
He filmed the documentary over 6 years. It follows people from 3 different generations as an observer without conducting any interviews. Vice Mayor Cameron Evans is one of the subjects. He says Usui's approach felt different from the countless news reporters who passed through.
He basically lived here long enough for him to become part of the island himself in order to gain those trusts to capture something quite beautiful.
The film crew is raising money to hold free screenings on the island on May 10th. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
A Chesapeake hospital is notifying patients who were treated by a nurse fired for reusing syringes. WHRO's Sienna Morales tells us what's next.
A nurse at Chesapeake Regional Medical Center was fired for reusing needleless syringes while administering IV drugs. The hospital says there are no known cases of illness from the nurse's action. The risk of infection is extremely low because no blood is exchanged with needleless equipment. However, the hospital and the Virginia Department of Health recommend that patients treated by the nurse get tested for bloodborne pathogens. They're notifying people who were in the post-anesthesia care unit between July 24th, 2023 to January 20th, 2025. Free testing will be offered to patients through the end of July. Sienna Morales, WHRO News.
Noise from a solar farm is continuing to pester a group of Suffolk residents. WHRO's Nick McNamara reports how their quality of life has been impacted.
Neighbors of the Stratford Solar Farm on White Marsh Road in Suffolk say they hear this for 15 hours a day lately. Shane Alexander lives across the street from the 99-acre farm, completed in 2022. He recently returned to Suffolk City Council to ask the city to suspend the farm's permit until more noise mitigation is placed around its power inverters.
To say it is frustrating is an understatement. It is to the ridiculous point now.
Pinegate Renewables, the farm's developer, says they cannot comment at this time. Though the farm's operations fall within its permitted decibel limits, Alexander says the persistence and frequency are harming his family's quality of life. Mayor Mike Duman asked the city manager and attorney to explore Suffolk's legal options to resolve the situation. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
Hampton Roads is celebrating the area's unique ties to NATO. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh says it comes at a time when the U.S. is questioning its role in the alliance.
NATO Festival is an annual ritual. The parade is in its 72nd year. The floats are assembled at a public works garage in Norfolk.
I think everybody will be fine. We have a few different countries that are, kind of behind the 8 ball, but they're getting there.
Parade director Alex Pincus says locally the alliance remains as popular as ever.
I think that history helps it to be accepted and helps it to be thought of in a positive way. So I've got to trust in that.
The parade of 32 nations makes its way through downtown Norfolk Saturday, followed by a festival in Town Point Park. It's by far the most visible aspect of the Supreme Allied Command transformation. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
Mitch Landrieu spent 8 years as the mayor of New Orleans. He was in Newport News last week to address the Hampton Roads Social Justice Conference. WHRO's Ryan Murphy sat down with Landrieu to talk about the challenges both New Orleans and Hampton Roads have in common.
So there are a ton of parallels between our region and New Orleans. A big one's housing. How does a city facing housing access and gentrification issues best address the needs of low-income residents?
Well, in the last 4 years, housing has become a critical crisis everywhere in America for everybody along the socioeconomic ladder. And of course, as the great General Honoré reminded us after Katrina, when it gets hot, the poor get hotter, and when it gets cold, the poor get colder. And so in cities, when they take this on themselves, they have to find a way to make sure that people have shelter and livable spaces. You can't really enjoy economic well-being without having affordable, housing or a roof over your head. It's really the number one concern for people. Insurance rates are too high. You have instances where it's too hard to build homes in certain areas. When folks come in, sometimes they don't require that they have affordable units. It's something that cities really have to make a priority. Gentrification is always a challenge and a problem. You want to invite people in to come, but you don't want them to push folks out. And communities have to be intentional about that. In any new developments in areas, especially old neighborhoods, need to involve the citizens very, very, very early on, because it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and there's enough room for everybody.
Now, New Orleans has seen tons of new businesses crop up over the last 15 years or so. How does a region reliant on legacy industries like shipbuilding or shipping diversify its economy?
It is really important to not be a one-trick pony. Every city goes through this. New Orleans, a long, long time ago, was a huge port. We became more of a tourist destination, but we still also have a working port. But if we hadn't diversified into tourism or to creative industries, we would have had a challenge. So I'm not saying that the businesses that are close to, that come with being a port are not important. I'm just saying that things can happen that you can't control. For example, when 9/11 hit, people in the country quit traveling, and all of a sudden all of the places that were tourist dependent on when COVID hit, you better have something to fall back on. So now all of a sudden, with this tariff crisis that we're having right now, all of a sudden ports are going to start really struggling, so they have to have something else to fall back on. So every city, no matter where they are in the country, whether they're poor or rich, you got to have 4 or 5 buckets, so that when something bad happens that you can't control, you've got something else to lean into. Everybody kind of pats New Orleans on the back for being such a creative place: music, food, fun. Well, we created that. I'm not saying that we don't dance a little bit better than everybody else in the country or cook a little bit better. That may well be. But those kinds of cultural industries can come from everywhere, because everybody's got creativity. Everybody can learn new skills. You have to intentionally develop them, which means you have to have your education programs moving in the same direction. You have to have your tax incentives moving in the same direction. You have to intend to create something. It just doesn't happen.
Flooding is obviously a huge issue for both our communities. What advice would you have for areas like ours already feeling the impacts of climate change?
If you're living by water, you really got to think about whether you're going to live with water or try to live against it. You can try to block it out. Water generally always wins. You build a levee, there's always water that's going to go after it. So you have to live with it too. The Netherlands actually learned this better than anybody else in the world. And New Orleans took some pages from that. And as we reconstructed the city, remember, we lost 250,000 homes. The city was 17 feet underwater. So we had to reconstruct our levee system. We're in the process of reconstructing our sewage and water system. This area is particularly vulnerable. You got the ocean right down the street, and you've got this port. And when the sea level rises, there's not a whole lot you can do about it if you don't go higher or you don't put stronger barriers or more protection. And you got a lot to protect, because if you shut down this port or you shut down the houses because the sea level rises, and so you have to think about what resilience means for you. It takes you into the clean energy space. People get all freaky about that. But the fact of the matter is, it's getting hotter, the water's getting higher, storms are coming faster. I know that there's a pushback on that right now, but if people want to just kind of ignore that that's happening, they're going to find themselves, really wet sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Mayor Landrieu, for sitting down with us today.
Still ahead on Weekly Edition, Virginia's abortion rates were up by a surprising margin in 2024. We'll break down the numbers, but first, the next time you look up at a power pole, you might see something unexpected. Dominion Energy is working with Christopher Newport University to turn the poles into habitats for bats. WHRO's Catherine Hafner has the story.
Several endangered bat species in Hampton Roads already roost on power poles, which resemble trees. David Bilyeu with Dominion says they want to take advantage of that.
This was just a natural evolution for utilizing something that's already in the field.
He helped design a 3D printed device called a bat flat. The creatures can crawl inside and rest, hidden from predators. Dominion's put up 13 so far near its nuclear plant in Surrey. CNU biology professor Rick Sherwin is studying the effort. He hopes it could help bats spread throughout the region.
It can maybe start to replicate their historical patterns of distribution than we have now, where a lot of them may be concentrated in the remaining stands of forest.
They saw a good sign this week, bat poop underneath one of the poles. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
Economist Nikki Johnson says Hampton Roads should brace for declines in business investment and consumer spending as the federal government looks to cut workers and implement tariffs. WHRO's Ryan Murphy has more from Johnson's report to the Hampton Roads District Planning Commission last week.
Hampton Roads is home to 51,000 federal civilian workers, the third highest concentration in the nation. Johnson says those jobs pay more than double the average of other civilian jobs.
For every federal civilian job that we cut, you would have to create 2 new private sector jobs to maintain the same level of total compensation.
The administration of President Donald Trump wants to slash many of those jobs to reduce federal spending. Johnson says economists across the country are expecting a major economic slowdown.
We definitely are more vulnerable than other areas of the country, but it all depends on where the spending cuts, where the workforce cuts are focused.
The administration has also implemented broad import tariffs. It's particularly targeted China, which sends more imports through the Port of Virginia than any other country. Ryan Murphy, WHRO News.
The new Secretary of the Navy made his first stop last week in Hampton Roads. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh tells us what happened.
Navy Secretary John Phelan toured the Newport News shipbuilding and Norfolk Naval shipyards. It was part of a listening tour as the Trump administration promises a massive investment in shipbuilding as part of a $1 trillion defense budget.
We need to create a greater sense of urgency in the Department of the Navy. We need to figure out a way to make things quicker, more adaptable. We need to take more risk in what we're doing, learning, getting these things out quicker.
Phelan toured the carrier John F. Kennedy, still under construction at Newport News. The Navy has been chronically behind and over budget in both building and maintaining the fleet. Phelan says all options are on the table, including reopening old shipyards and building some ships overseas. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
Catholics around the world are mourning the passing of Pope Francis. WVTF's Brad Kuttner spent time at a special Mass held by the Richmond Diocese this week to honor the Pope.
Mary Kate Aylward, with 4-month-old Louis strapped to her chest, said her fondest memory of Francis comes from when he took the name of St. Francis of Assisi when he rose to the papacy in 2014.
He was really fierce in his love of poverty and the poor and the sick. So I think that was an incredible example and a challenge to all of us.
Inside the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart on VCU's Monroe Park campus, where Aylward had just participated in a mass honoring Francis, Bishop Barry Nessout spoke of the former Pope's strong faith as the head of the church.
He lived to 88 years. He's certainly someone strong in faith and presence for all of us and service to the church.
Francis was the first ever pope from the Jesuit order, a group of priests who focus on direct social and humanitarian work, often with a focus on the most needy. Father Shay Auerbach, pastor of Sacred Heart Church in Southside Richmond, and also a Jesuit, said he and his order lost a dear brother who greatly inspired him.
I think Francis really helped us understand and made very clear for us the importance of walking with the marginalized, accompanying them, listening to them, seeing all as our sisters and brothers.
Many found Francis unique for his more progressive views. During an Italian television appearance in January, the late Pope said he hoped God would forgive all, saying of his own personal view, quote, "I like to think of hell as empty. I hope it is." In Richmond, I'm Brad Kuttner.
Suffolk is cracking down on environmental crimes like illegal dumping. WHRO's Catherine Hafner explains how the city plans to do this.
City leaders are very familiar with a wooded area behind the Food Lion on Portsmouth Boulevard. Suffolk Commonwealth's attorney Narendra Plez says it's a hotspot for littering of household trash or even hazardous waste.
We got phone calls, we got emails, we got pictures frequently about dumping back here, and it's been ongoing for years.
She's leading a new task force to deter these types of environmental crimes and prosecute the perpetrators when necessary. Rachel Hykins with the fire department is the team's new dedicated investigator. She says the city cleans up these sites at the expense of taxpayers.
What got us here today is essentially being reactive. Moving forward, that will be proactive.
That means tracking down who is responsible and making them pay for the cleanup. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
This is WHRO's Weekly Edition. Remember, for any stories you've missed, you can visit us on the WHRO smartphone app or all social media platforms.
There was a large uptick in abortions in Virginia in 2024. WHRO's Barry Graham breaks down the numbers.
The number of physician-assisted abortions in Virginia rose from just over 33,000 in 2023 to nearly 39,000. The pro-choice Guttmacher Institute attributes the surge to Virginia's status as the only southern state without a post-Roe abortion ban or mandatory waiting period. That makes Virginia a key destination for patients from neighboring states with stricter laws. Notably, the number of out-of-state patients in Virginia grew by approximately 4,300, likely influenced by Florida's 6-week abortion ban enacted in May 2024. Despite abortion remaining legal in Virginia, the right isn't constitutionally protected, and the Democrat-controlled General Assembly has consistently blocked Republican-led anti-abortion initiatives. Barry Graham, WHRO News.
Peninsula health officials say the region is well protected after Virginia reported its first measles case of 2025 last weekend. WHRO's Nick McNamara reported the story.
Hampton and Peninsula Health District Population Health Manager Tess Ledoux says vaccination rates for more vulnerable groups such as children meet or exceed the rates for herd immunity. The vaccine is 97% effective at preventing measles for people who have received 2 doses, and Ledoux says it is the best preventative measure for the disease. But for immune-compromised people looking to take additional precautions, she says the same recommendations promoted during COVID apply.
At this time, we're not necessarily promoting masking, but that's always up to the individual's discretion, especially if they're immune compromised, or keeping, a safe distance in large crowds. And of course, practicing frequent hand washing is going to be the best method of prevention aside from vaccination.
People who want to know if their vaccine is still effective can reach out to their healthcare provider and get tested. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
BET Media announced a new docuseries centered around Michael Vick coaching football at Norfolk State University. WHRO's Catherine Hafner has the details.
BET says the series will follow the 44-year-old Virginia native on his transformative new journey returning to his home state. Michael Vick grew up at the Ridley Circle Public Housing Complex in Newport News. He went on to play football at Virginia Tech and 13 seasons in the National Football League. Norfolk State officials announced in December they chose Vick as their newest head coach. The show's producers say they want to highlight his transition to coaching and mission to engage with the local community. Norfolk State's football season kicks off in late August. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
Williamsburg's first poet laureate sees fertile ground for growing the art of the spoken word in the city. WHRO's Nick McNamara tells us how he plans to do that.
I'm caught in a time loop because with great power comes great responsibility. I work with kids. That makes me an Avenger. I'm also a poet. That makes me a Peter Parker. An everyday person with radioactive blood flowing through his veins.
LaCroix Atlas Nixon can do this all day. He's Williamsburg's inaugural poet laureate, performing to dozens at the monthly Second Sundays outing. Like his nickname Atlas suggests, he's putting the city's budding poetry scene on his back and elevating it.
I'm not a hero. I'm just proof that art and elbow grease might save someone's life. Like
Williamsburg City Council in April appointed Nixon to a 2-year term beginning in July. The position comes with a $3,000 stipend. He's been a poet for more than 8 years, cultivating his skills while attending Liberty University in Lynchburg. But he dropped his first lines of spoken word at War Hill High School after being introduced to it in 10th grade English.
If I would have told myself, oh yeah, people are going to pay you to stand in front of people and talk, I would have laughed. I was so introverted.
Nixon won 2 local poetry championships through the NAACP's Afro-Academic, Cultural, Technological, and Scientific Olympics, or ACT-SO program. The experience inspired him to stay in the art. Nixon is a regional director of teen programming at the YMCA in Williamsburg, a member of the Poetry Society of Virginia and on the Writers Guild of Virginia Executive Board, and the founder of Slam Connection, a nonprofit that hosts poetry workshops, open mics, and helps incarcerated teens find an outlet for their emotions through spoken word.
A lot of kids crash out because they don't know how to maneuver or operate those emotions. Poetry is an avenue that by nature makes you face those emotions and makes you communicate with them.
Somewhere across the Spider-Verse, there are friendly neighborhoods where we teach young spiders that they webs can catch dreams and not just cases, because I've been someone's Uncle Ben, someone's living sacrifice.
Nixon brought the idea of the Poet Laureate program to Williamsburg after he graduated from college in 2021 and moved back home. He noticed there wasn't a thriving poetry scene and saw an opportunity to cultivate one alongside artists, including his friend Daniel Garwood. Garwood says this moment is
showing that you can start a rose from the concrete. I think that's going to be the shift of art in the city.
The Williamsburg Public Art Council and City Council in 2024 bought in and opened applications for the position, picking Nixon to advocate for the city and champion its arts.
But also think it's really going to engage our school-age children and what poetry is all about and how they can participate in poetry and hopefully build that desire to be a poet laureate in the future.
That's Vice Mayor Pat Dent, who serves on the Art Council. In addition to presenting original works at city events and advocating for a cultural arts center, Nixon plans to establish a youth slam poetry league.
It doesn't matter how dope any artist is, doesn't matter how amazing you are at whatever you do. This isn't just poetry, this is any art form. If there's no generation coming after you to do it, then it dies.
It's not lost on Nixon that he's stepping into the position as a black man in a predominantly white city.
I recognized even by taking the office, even by starting this, that me being here breaks up a lot of fallow ground. It breaks up a lot of status quos that have been here in the city for a long time.
Nixon remembers being singled out for his way of speaking in kindergarten and feeling written off by his teacher, something he noticed was only happening to black students. Nixon hopes that his laureate work can break up old prejudices and foster new opportunities for artists.
People are hungry to hear from other people. You can only silence somebody so long before the room's silence becomes way too loud. Even after my laureate term is over, the work is not going to stop. There will be other people that will come alongside me or that will come after me that will speak about the things that need to be spoken about, that'll carry on the cause, that'll make space for everyone.
We're not heroes. We're just proof that art and elbow grease will save someone's life because, hey, somewhere across the Spider-Verse, there's a reality where this poem never had to be written. Thank you.
Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. We had help today from WHRO's Steve Walsh, Sienna Morales, Catherine Hafner, Ryan Murphy, Barry Graham, and Nick McNamara. WVTF's Brad Kuttner, and WUNC's Colin Campbell. Also Connor Worley, who produced today's show. A reminder that you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed. You can get your news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed. For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Doug Boynton. Stay safe. Be well.